Last Minute Blues Podcast with Donnie, Alex, Jeremy, and Jeff Burton.
It is an absolutely beautiful freaking Friday in St. Louis. Donnie Fandango joined in studio by Alex Ferrario from 101 ESPN and Jeremy Rutherford from The Athletic. And the point of this podcast is quite simple. It's blues hockey, baby.
Oh, baby.
That's what it's about, is blues hockey, and we got a lot of stuff, a lot of ground to cover today. We've got some emails that I want to get to, just a couple of questions in which that I have, and then the team outside, the game last night was a bummer in which that they lost. You definitely think that Benner would probably like to have a couple of those back, but there are definitely parts of that game, though, where you still see the Blues they had the screws turned on Pittsburgh.
Hold the phone, though. Hold the phone. Literally 2 minutes ago, you said, I have not had my coffee yet. You went out, you got a coffee. You took 2 sips of it. Now you look like you had 4 cups. How did this happen so quick?
Did you put it in your bloodstream back there?
Dudes, honestly, I think in doing this for so long, when that stupid microphone goes on, I think
you just turn it?
I think my brain just can work like that it's weird. But don't worry, because I'm still half asleep, and I'm not really sure half of the questions in which I'm going to ask you guys today. So I will drop the ball, but at least there's a little bit of we're starting with at least a little momentum, I suppose.
That energy's
also, I think we should change JR's name on this show to Hollywood.
Oh.
Coming back from L.A., I think we should just start calling him Hollywood.
Yeah.
Sorry, boys. I missed the trade deadline podcast.
This was priority number 1, and honestly, a shame on you for not being
I felt so bad. We have this group text, guys, and, hey, let's do the pod right after the trade deadline. And I was just telling Alex, Donnie, that I was in L.A. I stayed there the entire 5 nights that I was out there, even though they had the one game in Anaheim. And you got to jump in an Uber to go down to Anaheim, which I think people in California tell me I'm wrong here, but 50 minutes maybe. But if there's no traffic, but it was about an hour and a half to get to Anaheim. I think Matt DeFrank's Post-Dispatch took him 2 hours in an Uber to get down to Anaheim. So as you guys are talking about doing that post-trade deadline podcast, I was thinking I get an Uber and get down to Anaheim somehow for this game.
Can I just ask, how does that sound fun for anybody to live?
Dudes, Alex, I was just going to say that. I could not live my life like that. There's no way.
No, I dread driving 25 minutes because I know traffic is going to be there. To sit there and be like, I got to go downtown. It's a 50-minute drive with no traffic. Probably about 2 hours.
Can I ask a question that you guys might not have the answer to? And I understand that we're veering off course here. But, is there a public transit option that gets you there quicker than that? Because if there's not,
helicopter.
Right, but
I think the Uber guy said something, but I think it takes a while. But I'll say this: you guys would have been proud. He pointed out SoFi Stadium on our drive down to Anaheim. And I said, "Could you just pull off here for 1 second?" He pulled off.
Peed on it.
I got the Weezer out, took a public intoxication ticket, and away we went.
See, Hollywood.
There we go.
Hollywood.
I like it. You made great use of your time in Southern California.
Or Mr. Wiz, whatever we want to call him. Either one. The Wiz.
How about those Blues?
I was really drunk outside of Wrigley Field a whole bunch of years ago. I'd seen a show at the Metro down the way, and it was going to be so funny that I was going to pee on Wrigley Field. And then I'm there, and I'm thinking to myself, if I get arrested for this, I have kids, and I know better than this. So, I went from it being this super cool, badass moment to me just completely chickening out.
It was Wrigley Field. It would have been in your obit.
That's true.
Donnie,
You're very right, man. That's legendary.
That is legendary.
All right, guys, we got a few emails here that I've been sort of sitting on.
Love emails.
And so I want to start with these here, and then we can go on and, talk more about the team and the playoff push and those kinds of things. But we get this email from David, the only hockey fan in Columbia, Missouri. He says, having just attended the Cardinals winter warm-up, I keep walking around thinking, why don't the Blues do something like this? We always hear about the alumni who all live in St. Louis. The team has the 14 fund that could benefit from the event. 1 + 1 = 2. Has this kind of thing been discussed? There's more to the email, but that's the general point of it.
Yeah, no, internally, I don't know over the years if they've thought about having a winter warm-up type event.
That's a great idea, though.
Yeah, it's a great idea. I think they could get the turnout right, and they're always looking for ways to raise money for Blues for kids, and they do an outstanding job with that. I know they've had smaller events, Alex. Icebreaker.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I know they did the Icebreaker, but didn't they do something when they unveiled that alternate jersey with the arch on it? Didn't they do like a like a season opening event.
Yeah.
Now, this was in the middle of the post-lockout, like, bad Blues teams.
Yeah, and that was Dave Checketts, whatever he could do.
Yeah, well, that makes a lot of sense. And then the other one that I can remember, this was when I was like a high schooler and I used to go to it. Didn't they used to do like autograph sessions after training camps and things like that? Because
Yeah.
I specifically remember lining up at the mills and waiting for the guys to get off of the ice.
Yeah, they've done a few things over the years, but nothing like you're talking
Yeah,
about.
that's
And
extreme.
maybe I'm trying to think of this on the fly. So they bring in Cardinal players during the winter, obviously winter warm
Yeah,
up. You'd be trying to bring in the hockey players, in the summertime.
Which I guess might be difficult because
From
they're
Europe
a little more scattered.
Yeah,
Yeah,
a
that's
little
the
more
hard
scattered.
part.
Maybe that's the hard part.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, it'd be a great idea
Yeah,
to be able to
absolutely
do that,
so.
especially to have the one-on-ones and all the broadcasters with front office members and things like that. But that they're scattered, and not that the Cardinals players aren't scattered everywhere, but you got to think when that happens, they're like a week away or 2 weeks away from where they're reporting to Jupiter.
Yeah,
for
it's really
spring training.
close, right?
Yeah. So, they've got the fall leagues that are taking place around that time. So, like, all of this stuff kind of combines at the perfect place. But, man, I mean, you'd have to talk about probably 2 weeks before training camp
Yeah,
would start.
don't try to come up with something else that we can cover.
What are you talking about, JR? You don't want to start working in August?
We got the
and stuff?
draft, we got the free agency. Now you want to have ice summer warm up.
They want to make this like the NFL. All year round. 360, 12 months a year, 365.
I'm all for it.
Hey, guys, and heavenly hello to our boy Jeff Burton on the podcast yesterday. Well, so this was a bit ago. This is about a week ago. You mentioned about Monty's coaching style starting to work, and at 5-on-5, we're a pretty tough team to play against. Why is the PK and power play been allowed to stay so inept? Seems to be 3 or 4 years in a row now. Does Monty have a say in the drills they practice, or is Otter, Webbs, Claude not getting it done, or perhaps is it player personnel? And this is from Alan. And I think that's a great question. I'm going to start this, and then I'm going to let you guys go. Monty absolutely has a say in everything. I'll put absolute money on that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at this point, guys, if I could take a guess at this, it's the horses. It's the guys that are out there executing, right?
At least for me on the power play, it is. Like, what you saw from Bolduc last night against Pittsburgh, that's what they have lacked over the last couple of years and why the power play is struggling. You just don't have a one-time threat. Like, we talk about this all the time on the broadcast side. Like, if you just watch the power play for the last couple of years, it's just been pass, hoping to just have an empty net to tap it into. But typically the power plays that are the most dangerous, they get the goaltender going from post to post, but at some point that shot's coming. And if the goalie's not set, if somebody's not ready to block it, it's going to be in the back of the net. Mm-hmm. You just haven't had that since Vladimir Tarasenko, since David Perron. Now you seemingly have it with Zack Bolduc. I mean, that one-timer last night was impressive. And then once you get a Snuggerud in who's got a one-time shot, once you get a Dvorsky in who's got a one-time shot, now you're starting to see those threats really come in. But you've also struggled on not having a power play quarterback. And now that Cam Fowler's able to accomplish that, hopefully that can help you a little bit more. But, yeah, power play for me, the penalty kill's different because 2 years ago the penalty kill was really good. And it was Thomas, Buchnevich, Toropchenko, Walker. Yeah, you lost an Ivan Barbashev, but, I mean, defensively, I think penalty kill-wise was kind of structurally the same.
Yeah, Alex is bang on. Power play at times this year, even though it hasn't been great overall throughout the year, it has its moments like last night. I mean, and you said it. I mean, you missed the shot from David Perron. Now you have it with a Bolduc. As soon as he kind of gets into the power play, and, he's on that number one unit consistently, I think he'll be a big threat. And then also Holloway. Big blast last night. So power play, it looks like, they've made some strides over the course of the season. The PK, it's just, I don't know. I mean, they even tightened it up during the Four Nations break, and it came out. And Dallas has a great power play, don't get me wrong, but, that was a tough night, especially when you play so well 5-on-5. That's the thing with this team, Donnie, is, they're so good now 5-on-5 under Jim Montgomery that if they can get top 15, 20 special teams, and not be bottom 5 in the PK, they should be okay. So, I like and respect Coach Mike Weber does a penalty kill. You asked about Jim Montgomery. Does he have a say? For sure. When he was here as an assistant, he actually switched from the power play to the PK, so he was in charge of the PK. He's got a history of coaching PK in the league, so they need to figure it out. But I think, like you said, probably do need some horses. I don't know how much turnover we're going to see with the roster, but you'd like to see some guys who are equipped to play on the penalty kill.
I hate to be this guy, and well, I don't really hate to be this guy, but
this guy.
I just love, even if it's not perfect, okay? I just feel as though many positive steps are being made here that give us reason to be very optimistic, okay? And not only about making the playoffs this year, and it's not that I don't care. I hope they do, obviously, but I just want to see them continue to play well and to get this system in place with these guys for next year so that next year, boom, you start out with the jump with whatever, roster changes are made, but you're starting with that mindset with the way that it's been going for the last month or so. Again, I know it's not perfect. Last night left a lot to be desired, but again, I still think even in last night, it's not like it's all bad.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? There's good parts of that too.
Yeah, last night sucked because you didn't come out with the points when you should have come out with the points, right? Like
against a team you really needed to get 2 points.
Tristan Jarry just beat you. Like, that's the only way to really go about it. And there have been games that have happened to the Blues to where the goaltender is just, even Dallas with the Jake Ottinger one. Like, your penalty kill hurt you, but Ottinger made a couple of saves that you were thinking, it's like, oh, man, I thought that would have gotten through. But me personally, like, I started the season, I think I told you this earlier this week, JR. I started the season thinking it's a failure if you don't make the playoffs because you have to take a step at some point. You have to taste the playoffs after missing it for 3 years with all these guys because otherwise you're just going to keep doing this cycle. But now I've changed my tune because I think whatever happens down this stretch, unless we see a complete fall off by this team, which I don't expect, if you figure out the 5-on-5, if you've got the mindset that all of these guys are talking about of, we just come to work and we're having some fun with it, we're fighting for each other, we've got that mindset. I know you're in a playoff race, but like Braden Shen told you, JR, like when you establish this type of winning culture in your group, you're setting yourself up for success. And let's say you miss the playoffs by 2 points because you didn't get the victory against Pittsburgh. Is it going to suck? Absolutely. But by no means do I view it as the same season as last year or 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Because now you've made progress. You pushed yourself into a playoff position, and you hopefully can figure out whatever slow start issues that you've had and now can implement it with a full training camp with Jim Montgomery, with the same roster expected, and then you start off from the ground running.
Yeah, here's the number one thing to me, guys. And again, I hate to keep prefacing it by saying whether they make the playoffs or not, but we'll see what happens with that. But here's the biggest thing to me. What do I remember a couple years ago when they did the postseason interviews and the players came out, they didn't make the playoffs, and they came out and Justin Falk was saying things like, well, we don't have the professionalism in the locker room that needs to be there, and we're going to have to work on that. Not to single out any players, but there were a number of players who first one's off the ice, just practice over, get off the ice. Now what do you see? You see Jordan Kyrou, Dylan Holloway out there for an hour after practice. Like when the whistle blows to end practice, these guys are just getting started. Yeah. It's amazing to see them out there for as long as they are after the workouts. Okay, also, they bring Oscar Sundqvist back. I'm not trying to paint him as the savior, but I did an article on Zack Bolduc today, and he is raving about how much Oscar Sundqvist is helping him. And then when you go to Jim Montgomery with a question like, hey, Sonny seems to be helping Bolduc, you guys have no idea, Jim Montgomery says, about how important Oscar Sundqvist is to bringing these young players along. And so that's what's being established. So what happens here, regardless of whether they make the playoffs, I know everybody wants to, but in 2 years' time, you go from a veteran who's really well-spoken in Justin Falk talking about the lack of professionalism to now when a Dvorsky and a Snuggerud walk into this building, they're hearing guys say, that's not how we do it. This is how we do it. So that's what's taking place in this couple
And they're not
years.
just hearing guys who are 34, 35-year-olds saying it. They're hearing 24-year-old Jordan Kyrou say it. They're hearing 23-year-old Dylan Holloway say it. They're hearing their peers say that's not how we do it. Rather than when you hear a 35-year-old Ryan Suter who's here saying, hey, that's not how we do it. Yeah, okay, you're, old-timer. This is how I do it. No, man, if Robert Thomas is saying that, if Pavel Buchnevich is saying it, if Kyrou's saying it, that's how you get everybody on the same page.
Because that's why this matters is because in a couple years when the Blues hope to be good, a lot of those players that you're talking about, the older players, they're not going to be here anymore. So what difference does it make if Dvorsky and Snuggerud hears it from a guy who's not even here in 2 years? I mean, it's good when they get here to hear that, but what I'm saying is if you have the Kyrou and the Holloway and those guys talking to him, and then they're still here in a couple years, still preaching it, then that's when that culture is built.
It's hard for us to have conversations like this, and for me to not get excited, super ramped up. like I'm just hearing this sort of thing, and that sort of culture change, which was so desperately needed, and which we had that culture in 2019. We saw what it could do, and then when it's sort of frayed, you're like, what the hell are we losing this? But seeing it come back together is just so goddamn exciting.
Well, and at least for me, Donnie, like that culture, if I remember correctly, and you would know better because I didn't cover it to this length, but that culture was in place when Vladimir Tarasenko and Jaden Schwartz came in, and Alex Pietrangelo, right? Because you had the Backuses, you had the Oshies, the Berglunds that already had the structure in place, the Steens from Ken Hitchcock. This is how we do it if we're going to have success. And then enter a 21-year-old Vladimir Tarasenko, a 20-year-old Jaden Schwartz. Oh, okay, this is how we do it. And that's coming from David Backes, Alex Steen, Alex Pietrangelo. These guys are going to be here, so you're going to have to get on board with what we're trying to implement.
Absolutely. All right, a couple more emails here real quick. And I had completely forgotten that we have got a dedicated listener in London.
Oh, yeah?
His name is Mark. He's messaged us before. But so Mark says a couple episodes back, you recently mentioned in passing next year's Olympics. I have to tell you that after registering several months ago, I finally got a time slot last week to make my purchases. I got tickets for a couple of other events, snowboard, cross and skeleton, where Team Great Britain actually has a good chance to medal. He got 4 tickets to the preliminary round in hockey. He got okay seats. No idea who I'll actually be seeing yet, but I should hopefully see some decent players. Goes on to say, loving the podcast as ever. Absolutely don't mind the non-hockey chat the other week. Tell the Moaners to foxa off.
Nice.
All the best,
Roddick
and keep
foxa
on
off.
doing what you're doing. And that's Mark in Manchester, UK.
Thank you, Mark.
Hell yeah, Mark.
So that's pretty freaking cool. He's
Shout
going
out
to the
to Mark.
Olympics, man.
That's awesome.
Olympics are Italy, right?
Yeah,
That's where it's at. God, I'm jealous.
take me.
Yeah, I mean,
Seriously,
I'll go.
Mark, if you got an extra seat, let me tell you, and if you got a bed to sleep in, I'll
and a
make
little
my
money
way.
to get me over there.
Yeah, no, that too. That'll be fine. I'll figure out that part.
All right, one more here. Donnie, don't worry about the hockey, non-hockey ratio complaining. I'm here for Donnie talking about hockey and other things. Bonus points for Alex and JR. P.S. Can we get a Giving Donnie-ish for 30 minutes podcast? You guys are
That's
live.
awesome.
I think that sounds like a fun podcast.
I'd
sounds
listen
like-
to that because you don't
I'm
give
listening to that
you don't
stuff
give
right
a
there.
fox about anything.
Yeah.
I'd listen to that.
That's a really great line by that dude. Like, for real, for real. That's a great
Way to
line.
go, Mark.
All right, so I want to bring up a player specifically that last night played in his 400th NHL game, a player that has been an absolute lightning rod for the last year and a half or so in St. Louis, and that is Jordan Kyrou. All right? We have seen a different Jordan Kyrou this year. I think everybody, even his detractors, should hopefully be able to say that they have seen a different player this year. But in thinking about this last night, I think one of the things that really stuck in my head is how long it took a talented player like Jordan Kyrou to get here. And when we are talking about Snuggerud and Dvorsky and even Bolduc and maybe even Neighbors to a certain degree, we really have to understand that it takes time for these guys to figure it out, and maybe finally it's absolutely all clicking there for Jordan Kyrou, and we are kind of seeing that all come together. But the reason that I say that is because I think we get, we see these guys come up, we see them play for 6 months, we see them play for 40 games, maybe even a little bit more, and we're like, why don't they have 20 goals? Why aren't they playing on the first power? It takes lots of time for these guys to develop unless it's a very rare instance. So we just gotta, even in being excited about Dvorsky and even being excited about Snuggerud, we got to give these dudes a minute because it takes a while for everybody to figure it the hell out.
Yeah, if you're listening to this podcast on the radio, you got to go to YouTube and watch Donnie. That is the best. I love it, Donnie. I love it.
My face turning red and my veins popping all over the place.
It is the
Fantastic.
best.
That's
So
passion,
sexy.
ladies
So
and gentlemen.
sexy.
No, I agree. I don't often like to cross Cardinals and Blues, but not everybody can be Jordan Walker and figure it out really quickly, right? Like
That
Jordan
was
Walker has.
sarcasm, wasn't it? Yeah, that was
just
sarcasm.
I was going to say, I was
Also,
like,
ouch.
I'm not that plugged into the Cardinals right now, but I don't think that that's been the case.
It
Also,
does
ouch,
take time.
JR.
It does take time. I think that with Jordan Kyrou, especially, I think it takes time for the guys who have such a high ceiling, because so much when you see that 40-goal potential is expected of them, and it is such a hard league to score in. I had a lot of fun working on this piece about Bolduc. I'll keep this about Kyrou, but the reason I bring up Bolduc is because we talked to Braden Shen a little bit about this, and he said, listen, when you are in junior hockey, you're scoring goals, the puck is always on your stick nonstop. Then you get to this league and the puck is not on your stick. It's harder to score goals, and people, that's all they
Your
want
entire
from you.
shift when you're on the ice is getting the puck back.
Exactly. And so I think Jordan Kyrou, obviously, there's maturity situations with all young players, most players, but then also figuring it out physically. And I think he got to a point this past off season where he realized, hey, this probably does fly fast. All of a sudden you're 29, 30. People are in my corner. They do want me to succeed, and I need to do my part. And I think he's gotten to that point. We've seen the defensive responsibility, right, from Jordan Kyrou. You turn on the post-game show and you hear Bernie Federko say, a very good year, a very good season for Jordan Kyrou. These are things that we didn't hear a couple years ago. So I think the praise is warranted. Does he have some hiccups? Yeah, all players continue to have the hiccups. But I think Jordan Kyrou I think he's probably, Alex, what do you think? Changed the tune, changed the mind of a lot of fans in St. Louis.
Oh, 100% so. I mean, I think when Jordan Kyrou first got to the league, everybody saw the 45 goals he scored in juniors, and they're thinking, all right, well, this guy's going to be the answer to our issues. And his first year put a lot of expectation on a Jordan Kyrou. And that's not an easy thing, because think about it. He's, 22 years old when he had that season that he scored 35 goals. And what I always try and remember is he scored 35 goals, but he was playing like a third-line winger for the Blues team. He wasn't a top-line guy. So the responsibilities are less, the matchups are a little bit easier, and you can have advantageous shifts. And then it's like he went through the transition that the Blues went through of like, okay, well, a lot of your top players aren't here, and you're pushed into the top player role. Now you've got more responsibilities, but he's never had to really use those responsibilities, because in juniors, he's the top dog. And as Braden Shen told you, in junior hockey, the puck's on your stick the whole time. You're in the offensive zone. You don't really worry about the other side of it. And then it's like couple of bad years. To me, there were a couple of pointers that really shifted Jordan Kyrou. One was that Craig Berube moment. I think the Craig Berube moment was a realization of like, man, this can't keep happening. Two was Montgomery. I think Montgomery brought an emphasis, and I even think Monty, when he came in it was Doug Armstrong on his press conference, was saying like, look, when a Jim Montgomery comes in and said, hey, this is how David Pastrnak does it, you're going to listen a little bit more than somebody else. And then the third one for me, where I really think it's changed the tune of Kyrou and how he plays and what he's doing, is Dylan Holloway. I think that when you're Jordan Kyrou and you see Dylan Holloway on the ice doing what he's doing, don't you look across and it's like, man, that guy's having the success that I want to have, and look at how he's playing. I need to go out there and play like that. Like, everybody has that friend that just, kind of pulls you in and kind of gets your head right at some point. I think that was Dylan Holloway for Jordan Kyrou. And now it's no coincidence. You see those two guys on the ice together hours after practice working on backhand passes. Their line has worked so well together. So I give so much credit to Jordan Kyrou, because it has been a lot of ish that he's gone through over these last couple of years. To turn your game into what he has done is impressive. And I think any naysayers that are still out there about him just have to understand with him the same way that we did with Colton Parayko. He's not going to be Chris Pronger, so you need to stop asking for it. Jordan Kyrou is not going to be a Brett Hall, Vladimir Tarasenko sharpshooter. What you're seeing over these last couple of games is what player he is supposed to be in the NHL.
All right, so then here's the question, all right? One of the things that we have talked about over the course of the last month to 6 weeks on this podcast is the potential for their need, or the thought that there could need to be a shakeup of this core, all right? You have Jordan Kyrou, whose full no-trade clause kicks in, I believe, July 1st. Mm-hmm. His trade value, I would think, is as high right now as it has ever been. Would you agree or disagree? Yeah. So, dudes, is he a trade chip? And there's a couple things I want to say. I'm not saying to shake up the core just to do it. Obviously, you got to do it with the right pieces. Is he somebody that you would try to dangle for a big splash move?
Well, I think you have to consider everything, especially with this transition that's going to happen with Doug Armstrong handing things over to Alexander Steen, and also the transition of you're going to eventually climb out of this retool and be ready to compete, but bring in these prospects along, the Snuggeruds, the Dvorskys, those guys. If I'm Doug Armstrong and or Alex Steen and I'm in that room, I'm thinking, what am I getting back for Jordan Kyrou? Because I have to be getting a dynamic offensive player back.
You have to be getting an upgrade over what you're trading away.
You have to. And whether you're making the trade because you feel maybe Jordan Kyrou doesn't exactly fit what type of team you want to be, whatever the reason is, I don't know what the reason would be. But if you're considering making this trade, and I understand what you're saying, with his trade value being potentially high and the full no trade kicking in this summer. Somebody has to become who that player is. I don't know, but you don't know that Mikko Rantanen's going to be available, right? And all of a sudden he's available not only once but twice.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying trade him for Mitch Marner, but there are players out there who, in the right package, it could make sense. Obviously, if it worked for both teams, and so you can't say no. You can't sit here and say no. You can't trade Jordan Kyrou. I don't know. There's Colton Parayko's the guy I'd keep on the team.
Yeah.
Robert Thomas, the guy I'd keep on the team. But there aren't many players on this Blues team that you'd say unequivocally, I wouldn't entertain the idea of trading them. You have to look into.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to treat the offseason the same way you treated the deadline. Our phones are open. We'll listen to anything you got to offer, but unless it's making my team better, I'm not going to pull off the move. I think the Ottawa Senators are a perfect example of what you're talking about, right? Like, they're a team that needed to shake up their core somewhat. They traded away a fan and team favorite, Josh Norris, to go get a younger Dylan Cousins, who was a second-line center. And now look at what Ottawa's been doing since the trade deadline. That's a core shakeup of where it's like, yeah, this is a move that's making us better than where we're at right now. I don't know if that move's going to be out there. I think everybody's living in this infatuated world of Brady Tkachuk's going to become available in this offseason. And there's two paths. One, I don't think it's going to happen because I think Ottawa's making the playoffs. And two, even if he is, this isn't NHL 25 where you can just force a trade, right? Like, people are like, oh, Kyrou in a first. That's not how that works.
Yeah.
That's a franchise player in Ottawa, and if you're going to make a trade like that, you have to do that. But to JR's point, I think you always have to keep your options open. I actually look at where the Blues are at now for how Kyrou's playing and think, man, they have the depth that could make them this pack mentality that they always talk about. If you think of the wingers for next season, you've got Holloway, you've got Bolduc, you've got Neighbors, you've got Buchnevich, you've got Kyrou, you've got Jimmy Snuggerud. I mean, those are six. Did I mention Bolduc? I think I mentioned Bolduc. Those are six really good wingers to have.
Yeah.
That two of those six are going to be playing on your third line. That's a good position to be in if you want to go this pack mentality. If somebody calls and is offering a Godfather offer, I think you always have to listen to it. But I'm not going to just trade somebody off of my core just to do it. Because I don't think that makes you any better. I think that makes you chase your tail, and then you end up being the LA Kings, where you have to make a massive deal to get a player that you think's going to make you better, i.e. Gabe Vilardi plus a couple of others for Luc Dubois, and it's a disaster in the first year, and then you got to trade him away just to get rid of the money.
And let's follow that up by saying this. And that core, changing out the core, that was a very, I think, interesting subject Doug Armstrong brought up. Are they really going to do it? Are they really going to change out somebody from
he did mention hockey trades multiple
core?
times.
He did. But let's go back on the calendar. When he said that, he was saying, we're not changing anything in the core, and we're getting the same bad results, so maybe we need to consider that. Well, now the results have changed.
Yes.
So I'm not saying that you reverse course and keep everybody in the core and you don't entertain ideas to trade someone from the core. I'm sure he will, look at those options. But the thing I'm saying is now they are playing for each other. Now there is production. Now they do. I mean,
the hard part
it's changed. I mean, it's changed a lot. The not only the narrative, but what they're doing.
The hard part, though, is how much do you buy into it for a full one of
for 82?
Sure. Because like if you're Doug, and this is why I think people, when he heard his media availability after the trade deadline, like, damn, this guy's kind of ruthless, because he didn't seem like he was really willing to make trades to better the team, and he was like, no, he's like, there was nothing out there. I actually think it makes sense, because if you're him, last year they did this. They got into the playoff race, and I think they fell out of it like the third or fourth to last game of the season, and that was because you brought in Drew Bannister. If you're Doug, you have to look at this and be like, how much of this is real, though? Because what can't happen
100%.
is next year, say it's fixed, don't want to make any moves, and then October rolls around, and you're 10 games below 500, and you can't keep playing catch-up hockey.
And I hope nobody gets the interpretation of what I'm saying there that I think that they don't need to change it out, because I think they probably need to. It's just that I think now that Monty's been in for a little while and they're starting to play better, you listen to Robert Thomas, he's like, we felt we were playing decent, but we weren't getting the results. Well, now they're getting the results, and it looks like things are building. So the bottom line is he definitely needs to explore whatever's out there, and if trading one of those core guys is in the cards, then by all means do it. But I really do think that something is taking shape here.
Zack Bolduc is turning into one friggin' hell of a friggin' hockey player.
Yeah.
Who I really am. He's one of the. See, this is what happens to me as a fan. I get so attached to these guys. And then when there's, trade proposals, and I understand that you got to give something to get something, then I get, I don't know. But can you talk about Zack Bolduc, and has this really all kind of started with Coach Montgomery kind of coming in, seemingly giving him some confidence, like, shoot the puck, bro. that is why you're here. But I mean, it seems as though this has really started since Coach Montgomery took over. Is that true? Talk about what you're seeing in this young man and kind of what you expect from him going forward.
Yeah, I think that, first and foremost, is he's a likable teammate who works hard. I mean, that's bottom line. We see so many young players come through the NHL. We've seen him in St. Louis where he come in kind of an attitude, entitled, how come I'm not on the power play, this and that. And that's not Zack Bolduc. And in working on this story that's at The Athletic today, I talked to a number of players who said the exact same thing. And you could say, hey, what are they expected to say? No, they'll tell you. They'll tell you.
They're honest about that.
Yeah, they're honest about those young guys if they think they're a little too much. But with Zack Bolduc, that's the first thing that they tell you. It works hard. And so, it was funny when I was working on the player poll story a couple weeks ago. One of the questions was, which player hopes to get noticed by the fans and asked to sign autographs? Oh, where's Boldy? Hey, Boldy, they're asking about you here.
That's awesome.
Where Boldy? And then Zack Bolduc's like 10 feet away at his locker stall, and he knows what's being asked because he just did the poll. So he's like, you're saying me, man. Come on, man.
That's awesome.
And so he's working hard. And listen, there have been a lot of young players, as Alex knows, that when they get healthy scratch, they moan and groan. And that wasn't Zack. He said, hey, look, Alexander Steen came to me between periods and told me X, Y, Z, and I should work on this. And he's a learner. He wants to get better. And so he knows that he's got the shot. He knows that he can score. But as I tried to show in the story today with some of the video clips that I have in there are the little things. Real quick, I know it's hard, radio, podcast, YouTube, but there is a play in the LA game where, he comes across the blue line with the puck and the defenseman's there. Normally, he might earlier in his career try to get around him or try to razzle-dazzle, do something. But he just flips the puck into the zone, and the Blues keep possession because they got it deep. And those are the little things.
Yeah.
That game last night, you look in the final minute 3, who's on the ice? Zack Bolduc. Yep. When a coach can trust a player like that. So he's doing all the small things that are gaining the trust, not only with the coaches, also with his teammates. And it's why I think he's been a legitimate factor in the Blues getting this thing turned around a little bit.
Yeah, I personally think he's put himself into the core already conversation of this team. And it's to what JR's – the part that I loved from your piece was Shen talking about how he's figured out the forecheck side of the game early. And, I think Shen pointed out, he's like, that was what was trying to hammer into my head when I was coming up into the league. It's like, you've got all the skills offensively. You've got to figure out what to do away from the puck so that you open up more scoring opportunities. Just watch Zack Bolduc play. I think it was the first game against the LA Kings, if I'm not mistaken. He went in on a forecheck, laid a body check on a player to separate that player from the puck, and then was able to move the puck into the center of the ice for a goal that was Matthew Joseph's goal. That doesn't happen for 22-year-old players a couple of years out of juniors. They're more about, I'll stand here and get the puck from you and I'll score the goal. But he's figured out the forecheck side of the game because he knows the offense is going to come. I think that's coach influence, but I also think that's his own personal influence because 2 years ago when he was sent back to juniors, they basically told him, hey, you got to get good away from the puck before you even want to get to the NHL. And he went back and he did. And I remember last offseason, or going into the offseason, we had him on BK and Ferrario, and we asked him, so what do you do in the offseason? He goes, I'm going to have 2 weeks off, and then I'm going to go into strength training so I can put on muscle, and then I'm going to work on my footwork, and then I'm going to work on my stick work. He laid out what his plan was. And I know a lot of those guys have it, but just hearing a 22-year-old be like, I'm going to go to Cancun for a month, and then I'll get back at it. I don't know. He screams David Perron.
Yeah, and he didn't even go. He didn't have a break. He went to Springfield during the Four Nations. And, hey, one more quick thing on him. I love simple quotes. If you want to talk for 2 minutes and have these fancy quotes, whatever. Right. But I love the simple quotes. And Bolduc had one a couple days ago in the locker room. He said that nobody's going to go get the puck for you. You have to go get it yourself.
Boom.
I'm like, right there.
Boom. That's it.
Dude, that's amazing.
Right.
That's the mindset.
And it seems as though and again, I'm drunk with Blues right now, but like, it seems that these young players, man, they've got the right friggin' mentality, the mentality that you want. Jake Neighbors, Zack Bolduc. I mean, it even seems like Dylan Holloway. I mean, even in Minnesota, Jimmy Snuggerud. I mean, it seems like the way Dvorsky works his friggin' ass off, he has sort of had that thing. And also, too, one thing I do want to ask, does Bolduc have, to use your phrase from a bunch of podcasts ago, does he have a piss missile? He's got an absolute, he has just got a rocket, doesn't he?
His middle name's Piss Missile also. It's Zach Piss Missile Bolduc.
I freaking love it.
Did you see the torque on his stick when he shot that last night? I'm like, oh my God, the stick's going to break.
It's almost like he knows he's shooting it before the pass is made.
Oh,
it's like the stick's ready, the position's ready, he's going down.
Yeah, so he will forever be known as Piss Missile.
All right, I got a couple of things here for you guys. What does it mean to see the Blues sign Colton Ellis to a 2-year, 2-way contract? How does this factor in the kind of goalie hierarchy here that we have going on with the team as we speak?
To me, it's goalie depth. To me, that was just you lock up the guy to be the number one in Springfield for the next couple of years.
That's it.
I think if you look at the trajectory of cap situation, Binnington's got 2 years after this, if I'm not mistaken. Hofer's an RFA after this year. 2 years from now, Colton Ellis will be an RFA again. Like, you're just setting yourself up for goalie depth moving forward. I think this is the first year that Colton Ellis has been the number one goalie for Springfield.
Yeah, for sure. And I got to say this. We had a youth hockey tournament, I want to say, in Tulsa, Oklahoma a couple years ago. And he got loaned to Tulsa.
Oh, that's right.
I turned, I'm sorry, we're watching a game, and they say the goalie is Colton. Dude, what? Here in Tulsa, like, how low can this guy fall? Give this Colton Ellis a ton of credit. Yeah. He has played his way back into the organization. And again, I'm not trying to say he's going to be here in St. Louis and he's going to back up Hofer in 3 years. All I'm saying is that he's put himself in a good spot, earned the contract, and like Alex said, it's good depth.
Just and maybe this is kind of a silly question that I don't even need to really sort of think about right now, but like, how do you guys handle the post-Bennington goalie situation? I mean, obviously, if he's still playing at a high level, you would think they'd probably try to sign him to a couple more years. But I mean, is Hofer the number one in waiting? Is there somebody else in the organization that they're very high on? Can we?
I think from what I've heard, they're just treating Joel Hofer as a slow progress to be a number one. Like last year they said they just wanted him to get the feel of the NHL games, and so they tried to give him ideal matchups that worked for him. This year, David Alexander had told Joey and Curbs, and they've referenced this on the broadcast, that they want to give him a little bit more of a challenging schedule. They want to give him tougher opponents. They want to give him bigger games and see how he handles it. Mm-hmm. But if you look at how many games he's going to play this season, I think you're probably still talking about somewhere around like 30, I think he's going to be at. I don't think he's going to go north of 35. So you still got the 1A, 1B. Mm-hmm. Next year, my guess is I wonder if you see more of Joel Hofer, because Binnington's going to be playing in the Olympics. Do you get a 50-50 split? And then after that, then I guess you get to the point where you really look at it and you say, can Hofer be our number one?
Yeah, and just to add this, I know there's fans out there, I see them on Twitter, who, they'll say Joel Hofer's not the answer. We've seen enough. Like, come on. Look at this position, this goalie position. Goalie coaches and NHL GMs can't figure out the position sometimes. So,
These are the same people, by the way, that after half of a season of Ville Husso said, Binnington's bad, make Husso the number one. Where's Ville Husso right now?
Anaheim, I believe.
American Hockey League.
Oh.
Look, Hofer.
Still, you were close.
The biggest thing is when he plays well and you see what he can be, those, even though they're just glimpses, that's potential. Yeah. And when you go through this year or 2 or 3 of him getting slowly brought along, like you said, that's what's building who he is. So listen, he could be the Blues starter in 3 years. He could be in the American Hockey League in 3 years. Yeah. Nobody knows, but don't come to the table and say that Joel Hofer doesn't have it.
It's just so bananas how the goalie position is. I mean, Tristan Jarry last night, and they were talking about it a bunch. Yeah. Been to the minors twice this year, and now he's won friggin' 3 in a row and looked, pretty fantastic last night at times.
Yeah, that was a little frustrating.
A couple things.
I looked at it and I said, hey, the Thunderbirds scored 6 on this guy. Oh, man, we can't get too past
boy, yeah, that is disheartening. Hey, and one thing that I do want to bring up, and just to bring it to people's attention, and I'm sure as hockey fans that you are very well aware of this, but the Frozen Four is going to be here at Enterprise Center, I believe, at the beginning of April, end of March, right? Mm-hmm. And you definitely could, at this point, get to see some Jimmy Snuggerud in, at Enterprise Center. So if you're looking for some good hockey, even if the Gophers don't make it through, but if you're looking for some exciting hockey to watch, not only is that coming up, but that also that PWHL takeover tour is coming to
March
Enterprise
29th.
as well. So there is so much freaking killer hockey stuff going on in St. Louis, on top of all of the clubs and everything going on at Centene and what the kids are doing. But, there is a lot of opportunity for you to see some great hockey. And on top of that, the Blues are literally playing every other day.
Yeah.
From here until the rest of this. I think it is almost every other day for the remainder. So there is just a lot of hockey in St. Louis for the next month.
Yeah, with Snuggerud, I think they got knocked out of the conference tournament, so they're going to be off for a bit before they,
so
resume the playoffs.
Play once they get to the regional round of the actual tournament, and if he has to win. They have to. They can't lose another game.
Okay.
It's like losing, you're a Blue.
Yeah, lose, you're a Blue, essentially.
So Minnesota already lost their conference tournament.
Yeah.
Yes.
Notre Dame, and then so they'll start off the NCAA
so it's kind
tournament.
so it's kind of like March Madness, to where you have the SEC tournament, and then that determines your place in the hockey tournament. And then in the hockey tournament, it's just a bracket where you win, you move on to the next round. But because they lost in that, I don't know where their rankings were at. I think they were top 5 in college hockey before their tournament.
Yeah,
they might
be fine,
fall a little bit. They're going to be a fine team, but they don't have any wiggle room. So now it's, if Snuggerud wants a championship, you have to win a game.
And then Donnie from the PWHL Takeover Tour, Jinsey Dunn is, I know she got a new last name, married Jinsey Rose.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm going to do a Zoom as soon as we leave here they have 6 siblings. So it's Jinsey and her 5 brothers and sisters, and they all play, or they have played throughout their career, some form of high-level hockey. Josh is in the Buffalo Sabres organization right now. And so they grew up, talked to a couple of the siblings already in this area, went to St. Albans School, 45-minute drive to school, 6 of them in an excursion, all their hockey bags, going over their spelling tests on the way to school.
That sounds like my family, minus the athletic ability.
Yeah, and so for this whole family to have some success, a lot of success for a few of them, at the professional
incredible.
hockey level.
That's awesome.
It's awesome. So we'll get a chat with them and have that story up at the athletic.
I always think about people with families like that, and I'd have to think that in their basement there is massive amounts of holes in the wall, from fights, from pucks, from sticks. You know what I'm saying? I would have to think that would be part of that sort of situation.
Here's the only thing is most of us don't have the resources to replace it, but I'll never forget when I did a story on Matthew and Brady. They said they broke the glass in the garage, the glass window, and I think Big Walt got on the phone, called at the time Scott Trade Center, probably called Jim Schmucki down at Enterprise Center, and he said, hey, we need some new glass for the for the house. And so literally the rink people took some plexiglass out to Walt's house,
and that's what it's good to be
installed.
Oh, it's going to be Big Walt.
That's true. You ain't wrong there.
Man, you know what? More than anything else, through the trade deadline, since Jim Montgomery's gotten here, it has not necessarily been the easiest of paths. But like I said before, man, guys, we're seeing some really positive steps from this team, and I think that there's lots of reasons to be optimistic. And again, playoffs, whatever happens, great, but it just seems like a good foundation is really being built and installed right now, and that's what we needed, as bad as anything else.
Yeah, it kind of feels like mission accomplished to figure that stuff out. Again, I'd be cautious just because you want to make sure it carries over into next year and it isn't just a 2-month thing.
Yeah.
But I'm still, even despite losing to Pittsburgh, which I know people are very upset about, I still think this team's got a shot at making the playoffs because I have zero trust in Calgary, Vancouver, or Utah. So there's plenty of hockey that could still get them into the playoffs.
That's what I feel like. I feel like just like it's been for the last couple of months, it's there for the Blues if they can just friggin' do it, for the love of Pete.
Yeah,
Glad you had your coffee to get you going. It looks like there's 3 sips out of there now.
Yeah, well, what was that white stuff that you poured in there?
Dude,
I said vodka?
I'm going to tell you. Oh, I thought you were saying cocaine. And I was like,
that too, man.
I was like, dude, I could not do that. I think that my brain would explode if I did that. All right, on the cocaine note, we thank you. We thank you very much for listening to the Last Minute Blues podcast. For our homie, Jeff Burton, we miss you, buddy. Jeremy Rutherford from The Athletic, Alex Ferrario from 101 ESPN. I'm Donnie Fandango. Thanks as always, and let's go Blues!
The Last Minute Blues podcast. Hear more at 1057thepoint.com.